Alrighty, hey Professor Howard, this is Seth Grayson. This is a video for my final presentation. I'm going to be doing a little visual art thing in the form of a Google slide. So I've got a little image here of a path kind of winding up a mountain, and I kind of am just going to add pictures to it and describe kind of things that I've learned throughout the semester and how my kind of perspective on music has changed. And so this will kind of just symbolize like my journey throughout the semester. And also kind of symbolize like music's journey throughout the last few hundred years as we've learned in class. Um, so to start it off, we talked a lot about the canon and how different things influenced what became canonized music, including how it was recorded, the cult of the misunderstood artistic genius, public concerts, German nationalism, all that good stuff. I thought it was really interesting how we talked about the circular logic of idolizing the main composers and saying, well, they're famous because that's what everyone listens to. But that's what everyone listens to because they're famous. And kind of that idea is what led to the canon being formed. So that's kind of the first step in our little journey here. Next up, we talked about all the different canonized composers, kind of how the idea of the solitary genius isolated women and minorities, which kind of led to this group of pretty similar people from like similar countries, similar backgrounds, all becoming like the most famous and canonized composers. So that was kind of the next step in the journey of things I learned throughout the semester. Next up, we talked about cultural capital, which I thought was super interesting, the differences between embodied, objectified, institutionalized capital, and how I think about my cultural capital, how that affects me on a day-to-day basis and how it affects others. Really interesting things to learn throughout the semester. Next up, we talked about race, ethnicity, culture, nationality, all that stuff, and kind of the differences, what they mean. Um, and how one of the things I thought was interesting, mass media is a true instructor of musical identity. So it kind of helps define, for better or for worse, kind of what a culture is interested in music wise, which I thought was really interesting. So that's kind of the next step there. Next up, we talked about lots of different cultures in music, namely Black people and their contributions and how they kind of went unnoticed and faced a lot of challenges. We talked about the five fallacies of racism, different privilege, either earned or unearned, and then the sonic color line, doing an assignment on that. So here's a picture of Barry White. I just thought that was a good looking picture. So it's kind of the next step there. Right along with that, cultural appropriation. We talked about the six I's of appropriation versus collaboration. Talked about the differences with that and like Native American music and just music of all different cultures and ethnicities and kind of how it gets represented. There's kind of the next building block there. Right along with that, we talked about Africa Sanctus with David Fanshawe and how for his time it was decent, but in the film he kind of made some jokes and did some things where by today's standards like not so kosher. And so it's another interesting example of just how do you use the culture and how do you represent their music and like identity. Make some more room here. We also talked about From Mao to Mozart with Isaac Stern and the effects of the Cultural Revolution in China. I'll keep going here because my time's going quicker than I thought it would. Kind of the next step there. And the next one's all kind of are similar. Back again to like cultural appropriation. We had two different editions of Les Indescalantes and compared kind of the ideology behind them. Right along with that, we talked about K-pop, its popularity, how it's become South Korea's primary export, which is awesome. Another little addition there. I should have put these all closer together. We're getting all bunched up at the top here. Talked about Carmen and how whether aspects of it were actually Spanish or whether they were just kind of came from French culture written by Bizet and then put in. It was interesting to analyze that. And then to top it off, one of the final things we talked about was women in music and how they've always kind of been underrepresented because of their position in society. Thought it was awesome to hear how people like Fanny Mendelssohn were equally gifted to Felix, but hardly got the recognition. So it's really cool to learn about that and kind of recognize how those um, trends in life we can try to avoid and get better at. And so I know it's not top tier quality, but this is my final representation. This is my visual art, kind of showing my progress throughout the semester and what I've learned, and kind of throughout the last few hundred years, how culture and music and stuff has been built, and how it continues to change and develop today. So thank you.